Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. It's great to be back at the local scene. This show is being taped in February, but we're going to be reporting on the recordings at the registry in January. I have a great guest in the second segment of the show, Bill Keohan of Keller Williams Realty, talking about the current Plymouth County real estate market. And as always, in the third segment, I'll get into a little of our county and colony history. So let's get right to the numbers. First image you're going to see is of deeds. So deeds were up significantly in January. There were only 513 deeds recorded in January, less than the 610 in December of 24, but 24% more than last January when there were 414 deeds recorded. Year to date, we're 24% up. The average sale price currently is $657,612. And you have to remember, Plymouth County is very diverse. There are a lot of wealthier communities where all the sales are in the $1 million to $2 million range, and a lot more of our working towns where they're lower. But it's an average. So the next image you're going to see is of sales of property. We're only showing the first month of the year, but as you can see, there are 27 communities in Plymouth County, from Abington to Whitman, and every community had sales of property. Plymouth and Brockton have traditionally had the largest amount, and that continues this past January. The next image you're going to see is of mortgages. Mortgages have gone up and down over the years. Right now, the average mortgage rate is pretty high compared to what it was 3 years ago. Not necessarily high historically 10 or 15 years ago, but it's certainly a culture shock to people that are used to 3% mortgages. There were 1,004 mortgages recorded in January, less than the 1,150 in December of 2024, but just like deeds, we had 23% more recordings of mortgages than the 816 mortgages in December of 23. Next image you're going to see is something we track very closely since the meltdown of 2008, when a lot of people got caught from low interest rates and multiple finances and that had difficulty maintaining their home. So we track these very closely. And during COVID, there was a moratorium. So on both foreclosure deeds and foreclosure notices. So they're very, very slow to come out. Only 10 foreclosure deeds in the month of January, more than the 9 in December, but 36% less than January of 23. And there's an image of foreclosure notices. So we track foreclosure notices very closely because foreclosure notices are the first document we see at the registry that shows somebody's in difficulty paying their mortgage. There were only 39 foreclosure notices throughout Plymouth County in January, more than the 35 in December, but still much less than last January. And we have a program with NeighborWorks where we give them all of our foreclosure notice information, and they send out a mailing to those people asking them if they'd like help trying to modify their mortgage. If somebody's in trouble, don't hesitate. You got to reach out quickly because you can spiral down very, very quickly. You're going to see an image of the foreclosures and orders of notice from Abington to Whitman again, and there's still a lot of zeros there. A lot of zeros both in the orders of notice and foreclosure deeds. But again, I can't stress it enough. If you're in difficulty, don't just sit around. Reach out to a federal housing counselor. So a lot of people are concerned about property fraud, although we don't have a lot of that, and usually it's interfamily. However, there's a thing you can sign up for called a property fraud alert. If you go to our website, PlymouthDeeds.org, go to resources, you'll see fraud alert. You'll put your name and your email in there. So if anything gets recorded against your name, you'll get an email that lets you know something was recorded. It's a great way to be vigilant. Not all the time will a Tom Smith property be yours if you're Tom Smith, but with more common names. But it is a great way to be aware when something has gone on record. Maybe it's something you intended, like a mortgage discharge, but if it's not, you can act quickly, go to a registry or talk to your attorney and try to figure it out. Beware of a lot of scams in real estate. Most people, real estate is their most valuable asset, and you have to be very careful about that and be vigilant. So I have a great guest coming on the second segment of the show, Bill Keohan of Keller Williams Realty, talking about his view of the Plymouth County real estate market. Thank you. Welcome back to the Register's Report. In this segment of the show, we've always done something educational in nature. We've had surveyors, appraisers, home inspectors, a lot of people involved in the real estate community. And of course, our realtors are the people on the ground every day. And I have a well-known realtor here with me today, Bill Keohan, Keller Williams Realty.
Thank you,
I don't
John.
pronounce it right every time I try it differently.
I know, it's a little tricky. Everybody has a different.
Bill,
we go with Keohan.
Keohan, okay.
Keohan,
Bill
yeah.
Keohan.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your business, your company.
Well, I work for Keller Williams. I've worked with them. I've been with them for 22 years.
Great.
And just the one firm. And one of the things that it allows me to do working for an agency like that is it gives me control of how I interact with my clients. And that has been a very helpful characteristics of the services I bring to my clients.
Okay.
Because it's been very trying since when I got into real estate in 2004. It was the go-go early
Right.
2000s.
Sure.
We saw a crash. We saw us rebuild in the inventory and the challenges. So you always had to, as an agent in the early part of the 21st century, you had to be playing heads-up ball and reinventing the role of a real estate agent in terms of the services I bring. So one of the challenges right now that all the agencies and people are talking about is the housing crisis. And there is a crisis in terms of inventory, but more importantly, there's a crisis in costs. It's very costly right now, and it's been a trend that's been going on now for 20 years, and people are slipping away the possibility of the American dream of owning a home. But one of the big things that I've seen over a period of time is that people that bought houses 30, 40 years ago, raised a family, now it's time to downsize. They're hesitant to downsize because they could sell their home for a lot of money, but they're going to be paying that much more for the new home, and they might not end up where they want or in a condition that they enjoy. They built a life in a community. They want to retire. This generation that's retiring, they really want to get involved in their community. They want to volunteer their time and their energy and give back. And they want to give back to a community in which they're familiar with. They want to stay in the town that they raised their children in and not find themselves somewhere at a great distance. So that the challenge for a potential seller is this concern of where am I going to go if I sell my home?
Yeah, one of the points I made earlier in the show, our January recordings were about 24% higher than last January's recordings. However, I totally agree with you. It's still a pretty soft market, and high interest rates and low inventory is a problem.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at the inventory for Plymouth County, Every morning I get up as a realtor, I go on to multiple listing service, and
Okay.
I'm looking at the inventory, and I start with Plymouth County. And Plymouth County has 361 homes for sale.
Okay.
That is a low inventory. This is the time of year when agents are putting their properties on MLS. This is where your listings are going in late February, early March. But to be successful doing that, you would have had to spend the time before the holidays and after the holidays working with your clients, because the other big dilemma for a person to sell is this idea of, how am I going to get the house cleaned out? Who can I get in here to fix the stairs or fix the heating or the plumbing? They try to reach out to different providers, and it can be daunting as time. So I work with my clients and bring them estimates and bids, what it might cost to fix that deck or what it might cost to fix that electrical box, because you want to get through your home inspection, and that's a trying circumstance. So as an agent, over the years, I've provided this service where I act as a agent between different people that can bring different services to my clients that can help them get the house on the market.
So has it been relatively moderate activity to date?
Yes, I think we're just getting into the spring market. As you come to the end of February, you'll start to see the listings start to increase across Plymouth County and in each individual town. It is concerning to see in Plymouth there's only 67 houses for sale, single family. I'm not talking about condominiums or duplexes. I'm just focusing on the single family home inventory right now, and there's 67 houses out there. That's fairly low, but it's better than last week because it's going up. Because as you approach March, in April, this is when the spring market really takes off. And this is what buyers need to be aware of. They're cautious about buying because of higher interest rates. They are cautious because of lower inventory and hesitant to get into a situation when there is an available property and it's properly priced and it's in good condition. It will go quite quickly, and they don't want to be in a situation where they're in a bidding war. So buyers are hesitant along with the sellers.
So how do you get sellers to realize it's the right time to downsize or move forward?
Yeah, well, time is the thing about a downsizing person. They want to spend more time with the grandkids. They want to spend more time with their community. They don't want to be maintaining this big home that they raised the family in. So they do want to sell. Time is pushing them to sell, and that's when those services come in. My advice to other agents is that when you meet with your clients to list the property, you need to expand your services and provide information or connecting your clients to reliable people that do contracting work.
What are the first couple things you do when you meet with a prospective seller?
A prospective seller, well, you want to go over the comparable sales to look at the house quickly for its square footage in its location, so to get an idea of what the base price would be. But then you want to look at the condition, because condition is a big thing these days, and getting towards a sellable condition can be challenging. Like I said, I'm always working to get people in to help the client get the home in a condition that he can sell it. But buyers are particular to that. They want to see the newer kitchen, the newer bath, the new electrical systems and plumbing and heating and windows and doors and trims. These are things that sellers are looking to upgrade and buyers are looking at. So the first thing you want to do when you sit down with a client is not only look at the comparable sales, but to start to look at the condition of the home and see what changes we can make to get the house in a situation that when it is listed, buyers will find it attractive because they're not daunted by the idea of finding someone to fix that kitchen or fix that bath. Just like the sellers have trouble finding these services, the buyers also.
So at what point do you sign an agreement with a prospective seller?
Well, once they, a listing meeting is a job interview. And that job interview might follow up with maybe a second interview, because most sellers will talk to multiple agents. They will sit down with them and they will discuss the comparable sales and the services that they bring, not only getting the house ready for sale, but all the marketing that you have to do to get to reach the most potential buyers in a marketplace. So during this interviewing process, you might come back for a second one Following that, you'd have an agreement, and that you would sign an agreement for a period of time to list the property.
So there's certainly been a lot of attention to fees lately. Do you want to just, I know it's a very complicated issue. Want to just describe it a little bit?
Well, it's obviously the decision that was made in the industry is that real estate agents will no longer list the fee on MLS. And that is something that you negotiate with your sellers. And eventually, based on the type of offer that you can bring in as an agent, you might be revisiting that concept also as you market the home for your seller, because the ultimate goal of a real estate agent is to move the property, and you want to make your client as much as they possibly can so they can afford the next move on their behalf. So those are the things that you're always thinking about as an agent when it comes to your commission. You have a responsibility to the people you represent in the industry that you work for, but in many ways, commissions have always been negotiable. Based on the agency that you work with, you can always reduce your commission for certain purposes, and agents have done that in the past. So this is not a new concept to the real estate industry in terms of being aware of your ability to negotiate that commission.
So I'm always fascinated by the changes in technology and how fast and paperless it is now.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've noticed in being an agent in the 21st century. I started out where there were people in the office that had been in the business for 40 years. So they were dating back to the 1950s and 60s, and I'd be in the office as a young real estate agent. You would hear the stories of how they moved real estate.
Yeah.
But yes, today a lot of the services that agents interact with are online. Whether it's your agency moving all the necessary paperwork to the position that your agency wants to collect that information, but also with multiple listing service, there's a lot of online activity. And then when you're now working with attorneys in facilitating a closing with your clients, you're doing a lot more online work. There's a benefit to that because they can be keeping accurate records. Back during that crash back in 2007 and 8, and there was a lot of toxic inventory. When banks went back to look at the paperwork, it wasn't really complete. So whether you're dealing with your office or your clients or a law firm working towards a closing, the collection of information is done digitally to be more efficient. But I'm just old school, so I like to keep everything in paper, and when I'm done, I compile that information and provide it to my client in paper. So I still believe in that aspect of the business.
So if there's a potential buyer out there watching the show, what would you advise them to do?
A buyer, I think that right now you need to watch those interest rates. You need to look at your credit score and work with your credit score. You've got to reach out to lenders and mortgage brokers to have conversations about what products might be out there right now and what products might be best for them. I think that if you're interested in buying, you should stay engaged in the industry at all times, especially the lending process, not only knowing what the inventory is and what the prices are and where they're going, but knowing that you're working with a bank and a lender and a mortgage person that is working to protect your best interest. And so just don't talk to one lender. You want to talk to multiple lenders and multiple mortgage people to get an idea of what the best products are. And in the end, protect yourself from a circumstance that might not be in your best interest.
And a lot of sellers want to make sure their buyers are already pre-approved, or
It does help. I mean, I think once that's an important thing to note when a potential buyer is out shopping around. You want to have hypothetical conversations with the potential lender, talking about your income, your debt to income, so they can get an idea of what you might be eligible for. But you really wouldn't start the application process until you feel comfortable with a bank, a product, a mortgage person, and then you would start to move forward. At that point, you would start running the application process for real, and that's when you engage them on that level.
And quick comments about first-time home buyers. I always try to stick up for them because people are getting very frustrated these days.
Yeah. So when you look at the South Shore and you look at a place like Plymouth, you got Plymouth County and you have Plymouth. Plymouth is about 47 miles from Boston. I always say this about Boston. Plymouth is fairly affordable, has been historically in the past. Because if you think of Boston as the highest priced real estate properties in New England, that's I call that the sun. And as towns orbit around Boston, Plymouth is like in the Goldilocks zone. It spins around Boston at a distance where it's not too far, not too close, and the prices are pretty manageable. But in recent years, it has become even more expensive in Plymouth. So you have to start looking at some towns that have transportation to your job and affordable prices. I know that people are very interested in southeastern Massachusetts, in the South Coast, going over to Fall River and New Bedford. These are up-and-coming areas that I have clients that are interested in. If you are an agent on the South Shore, you're not just working in the one town that you know, Plymouth, but you're looking all over Plymouth County and actually into neighboring communities. So you see that first-time buyers are looking for the lending process to be in their favor, finding something in an area that's affordable, and that has a lot to do with the infrastructure of that community, whether it has transportation to the jobs that they need to go to make the living that they need to pay the mortgage.
So I know our clock gets tight when we talk about all these important things. But last but not least, Governor Healy has come out with a new housing bill, and I'm curious whether you've had any conversation about accessory dwelling units.
Yes. So in one capacity, I'm a real estate agent, but I do serve as a town meeting member in the town of Plymouth. And I had served on the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board as an alternate for a number of years. And in that capacity, the ADUs were discussed at great length. It took some time for Plymouth to adopt it in the bylaw to be designed in a way that truly made housing affordable. But you wanted to be careful not to encroach on the quiet enjoyment of your neighbors in terms of being in a single-family neighborhood and then increasing it to a secondary unit in that capacity. So it took some time, but Town of Plymouth has adopted a ADU, and it's working well. But it is something that is a component to the housing crisis in alleviating the condition in terms of the lack of options for potential buyers. The governor has introduced an initiative that will have an impact on creating housing. You will see more housing out of that that initiative. But I also looked at organizations. There's a lot of nonprofits out there that are building housing for some of the most vulnerable people in our society. Whether you're the Task Force for the Homeless, trying to find an individual, group, congregate housing to get people from emergency shelters into traditional units. That's something that you have to also look, because when you look at the housing market, you have to look from all perspectives, and you can't just focus on one demographic. To make housing truly affordable, you're going to have to look at these situations where a crisis may exist. But there's other organizations that are historically known for building market housing. And that is the Plymouth, the housing authorities. They were big after the post-war era in the 1950s and 60s and 70s and into the 80s. And that's because they received federal and state funding at larger portions. Over the last 30, 40 years, we haven't been investing in our housing authorities as we had in the past. The greatest effort to build workforce housing in the United States you saw after World War II, after into the Great Society of Lyndon Baines Johnson. During that era, they were building housing. And then as you got into the 1980s, that was not a high priority. And we never really returned to investing in housing as we had in previous decades. So that neglect has led to a housing crisis. So I don't think it's just the real estate industry in the higher end or medium communities that are being affected by this, but by not addressing working men and women, young families, and some of the most vulnerable people in our society, we add to the crisis. So I think in the hopefully in the future we'll start to see these housing authorities that we should be reinvesting in them to build public housing.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. Track our time, but fast, as always. Good to see you. Welcome back to the Registered Report. Again, my name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. I want to thank Bill Keohan for the great job he did in describing what's going on out in the real estate market in Plymouth County and other tips that he gave. In this segment of the show, we always do something a little lighter in nature. We talk about some of the holidays for the month of February. Groundhog Day, Super Bowl was the 9th, Lincoln's birthday was the 12th, Valentine's Day the 14th, a holiday that many people don't pay attention to, Lithuanian Independence Day was the 16th, Washington's birthday the 22nd. So those are all great parts of our great culture. So we have these Plymouth county records that I want to share with you that relate to the holidays. First of all is a notable land record in Hingham. Samuel Lincoln, who was one of the first Lincolns to come to America. The Lincoln family came from Hingham, England. Part of the name Hingham got its name. When Hingham was founded, it was actually in Suffolk County. Years later, they voted to go into Plymouth County. So I want to thank Tommy Ryan from Suffolk County for getting me a copy of this document. But he came on the ship, the John and Dorothy, in 1637. He's credited with help building Hingham's old ship church. You haven't been there, it's a beautiful place. It's the oldest meeting house in continued use in the United States. The dwelling was deeded to him in 1649 with 2 acres of land in Hingham over what is now North Street. And if you've never driven over there, it's a great opportunity to see his house. And right across the street is a statue of his great-great-great-grandson, Abraham Lincoln, who everybody recognizes. The next notable record, again related to one of our holidays, Lithuanian Independence Day. Lithuania is a country in the Baltic states. It is a country that has had 2 Independence Days. It is now an independent country, but it's had 2 separations from Russia. And in Brockton, there were a lot of Lithuanians who lived in a section of Brockton called the Lithuanian Village. So this fellow, Fred Bakutis, grew up in the village. He went to Brockton High School, was a great track star, went to the Naval Academy. When he graduated from the Naval Academy, he became a very distinguished career as a pilot, rose in the ranks, and he led a task force that recovered the Apollo 10. But he actually, when he was in the Navy, he discovered new territory in Brockton, Antarctica. He was in charge of both the North and the South Poles. He's very well recognized in his hometown of Brockton. Many years ago, the assistant solicitor, Henry Finette, a representative Mayor then Jack Sims, a commander from Holbrook, Bob Doherty of the Navy, and they brought a time capsule to Antarctica to be opened in 2067. Fred Bakutis named that section of Antarctica Brockton, USA, Antarctica Naval Station. And last but not least, from our county records, we just went through the Valentine's Day holiday. We have many lighthouses in Plymouth County on the borders of our community, the Atlantic in Buzzards Bay, Atlantic Ocean in Buzzards Bay. One is Minot Lidge Light, constructed in 1860. It's about a mile offshore from Situate. The first lighthouse was knocked down in a storm. It was rebuilt. But what is notable about Minot's Light is it flashes 143, the numbers for I love you. So it is known as the I love you light. So for Valentine's Day in the future, take a ride out and take a look at it. So basically it's on privately now, but it's on a rocky outcropping measuring about 0.1 acres. And if you're out there in a boat, take a look at it. But again, it's privately in private ownership. And we always have done one of our Plymouth colony records since the Plymouth 400. This month, we're talking about a 1637 document when a Mr. Stephen Hopkins, who was an original Mayflower passenger, didn't honor the laws about the Sabbath. So there was no drinking on the Sabbath. So on several occasions, Mr. Hopkins had parties in the old days, and were drinking, and it violated the laws. So the colonial court didn't like that. It violated their laws, and he was fined for doing that. The colonial courts enforced their laws in many different ways. Could be stocks. In this case, they were fines, and to try to keep order in the colony. So I want to thank the folks here at the local scene for helping me put this show together. We try to keep people up to date with what, again, for most people is the most valuable asset, their home. We hope you had a good February. We'll see you in March. We'll have some great St. Patrick stories to talk about in those days. Thank you.